So, you have a tent and a rig, and you love overlanding. You have plans to do it big, on the trails and some super glamping? Want ideas, tips, news, and reviews? A podcast that's first rate and here just for you? You don't have to think about it. Join us and be about it. Something interesting? We want to hear about it. Come on, let's talk about it. Welcome to Waypoint Overland's Random Waypoints podcast.
Sponsored by Midland, communication for every adventure, the industry leader in radio communication technology and innovation for over 50 years. Sponsored by MYMEDIC. Sponsored by TEMBO TUSK. Sponsored by Shower Pouch. Sponsored by DMOS Collective, mission built and made for mobility.
Always remember, the opinion you follow should be your own. Just consider the things stated here to be a second opinion from a complete stranger online.
Hi, I'm Phil from Waypoint Overland, and you're listening to Random Waypoints. All right, so here we go. Welcome to another episode of the Random Waypoints podcast. We'll be doing an episode every week, so like, share, and subscribe. Hit the notification bell to make sure you don't miss an episode. This week, we have very special guest and reoccurring host, Michael Ladden from Drive the Globe. Welcome, Mike.
Thanks, Phil. Glad to be here again. And this is getting to be regular, so I like that. We got a lot to talk about.
Yeah, we're going to have to knock that reoccurring thing off pretty soon.
Probably.
Anyway, we're here to talk about nomadic life and overlanding, and I want to jump right into it. I did a little research for this particular show, and I found out what are the top 15 researched topics in overlanding. And I'm going to briefly give what the 15 are. We're not going to discuss all 15, but for the curiosity of the viewers, I'm going to give the whole 15. And they're in order from 1 to 15. Solar panels, gear, stove, campsite, cargo, off-road vehicle, vehicle suspensions, tires, Jeeps, Southwest, Pacific Northwest, British Columbia, Yukon Territories, Toyotas. So the first thing that jumped out to me was I never thought solar panels would be number one. I thought it might not even make the top 10. That's not a very sexy subject for it to be the number one topic in overlanding, for it to be solar panels. What do you think about that?
I'm actually not surprised. And the reason I say that is because I tell people the number one and number two thing. So it's interesting that solar panels came out number one, right?
Yes.
I would think water would be on that list. And I didn't hear you say water, because those two things, when I'm building out a vehicle, whether it's what I'm in right now, so talk about Nomadic Travel. I'm broadcasting from Phil's in a nice, colorful studio here with a nice Jeep behind there and all this stuff. I got this is my kitchen. I'm on board my truck here. So when I'm building out this vehicle or any vehicle, whether it's for full-time like I am, or equipping a Land Rover or a Jeep or a Toyota for a weekend or long weekend adventures, power is big. Even like I'm a big cyclist, and I've been riding since I've been here for the summer. I've been riding every day. I'm always thinking about even power on the bicycle or on my motorcycle. So how do you get power? Well, solar is the number one thing I think that people are looking into as an alternative to other ways of getting power. So if you're out in your vehicle, and we saw this at Overland Expo, how are you running stuff? How are you charging your phone? How are you charging your GPS? Is it hot? You need run a little fan. Is it, whatever how about your refrigerator? Maybe you've got an ARB or a Dometic refrigerator. How you run on your refrigerator? So right now, when you're in a vehicle-based environment, the only way that you can get power is from the vehicle itself, from an alternator, from running. But if you're not moving about, or you're camping and you set up your rooftop tent, you're going to be there for 3 days, like you and I were out in Mexican Hat, Utah. What are you going to do? Keep starting your truck up? Well, no, that's not really environmentally responsible. It's not economical. You're paying for gas. So I think we come upon solar is the legit source of power. Now I'm one to talk about it, I guess, because I mean, I've been literally running on solar for 8 months, running multiple refrigerators. I got, lights and all sorts of stuff going on in here. It's because of the solar. So I'm not surprised that comes up in number one, really.
Well, I wasn't surprised because of its importance. I just didn't think that it was sexy enough that the average person was Googling solar panels first. That's go ahead.
Well, let me give you a repose. I agree. It doesn't sound sexy, but let's talk about that for a second. We see people out there. Do you or do you not agree that it could be a bragging point? Meaning, like, I've got this amount of solar and I can do this with it, right?
I've actually heard those conversations many times.
So that's kind of sexy.
Good point.
Or, hey, I've got a drink machine that can dispense margaritas.
Right.
Well, how does all that happen?
Right.
Solar panels. And so there may be ways to make it sexy.
Yeah, it's still not sexy, but when I think about it more and more, it may not be the one that you just hop on the computer and search just to search. But if you're in this lifestyle, it's the one you're forced to search. After you buy all of these toys, eventually you're going to need to power them.
Right.
So it's like a forced search, I think.
I agree. And it's a super important one. And I think that there's probably another reason is that there's so many options out there, right? You can get roof mounted solar panels. You can get ones that roll out. You can get ones that glue on your truck. You can get ones that fold out like suitcases. There's endless amounts. And the other thing is that the technology has improved so greatly in the last 5 years, probably even in the last year, but like in the last 5 years, I can remember maybe 5 years ago going to a show or going to somewhere and seeing, there were maybe 2 or 3 brands of solar stuff. The solar also goes along with usually whether it's a portable charging system or, like mine, where it's truck mounted, just batteries or whatever. Solar doesn't really do a whole lot. I think people have learned that solar by itself is kind of useless. It needs to be stored somehow. So that's the second phase of this whole thing. Because you can get a solar panel. I've got one. I probably got one in my chair here. I don't know that somewhere. That folds out, and you plug your phone into, and you can put it in the sun. Okay, so that's directly going from the sun to that. But it's not really that direct because that thing has a battery in it, right? So the solar is charging the battery, and then the battery is charging my phone, and that works on the same level as a truck. The solar panels are charging your batteries that in turn power your refrigerator. So there's a whole process, and there's a lot of options out there. And I think people get overwhelmed by that. And that's probably why there's so many searches, because it's not that easy.
Well, it's beginning to make more and more sense to me now, especially when I look at what number 2 is. Number 2 is gear. So it's like if you buy a radio, the next thing you do is look for batteries, right? If number 2 is gear, which makes sense to me, the next thing, the next inclination is, okay, how am I going to power this thing once I get to camp? So it's making more sense to me now.
And that's the number one problem that comes up here, is that people have too much gear. People are carrying too many things, myself included. So like I'm sitting here for the summer trying to figure out, I made a goal with myself. I'm going to cut 500 pounds off my truck somehow. Now in the scheme of things, my truck weighs a total of 22,000 pounds. So 500 is not, not a huge increment if you're driving, say, a Toyota 4Runner or something. But I got, like, I'll give you an example, stupid example, but over the last 8 months, I've shot video with GoPros. I shot video with my Panasonic Lumix. I shot video with my iPhone. So those things I've decided. I've got a couple of drones. Okay, I've used those. Then I just looked through my camera bag yesterday. I've got 4 gimbals in there. I got 2 for my big camera. I got 1 for an iPhone. I got a gimbal for the GoPro, which essentially already kind of has a gimbal sort of system built into it. Do I need to carry all those things?
No.
Think about it. What does it weigh? That's gear, right? Because that's my big pet peeve about gear. But then to the solar point, every time you take something out of the box, guess what? It doesn't work. It never works. Ever, never, ever. I take it out. I go, okay, here we go. We're going to do this. Oh, shit. Not charged, right?
Right. I
you got to
agree.
charge it. Well, how are you going to charge all this stuff?
I agree.
Sun.
Exactly. I agree. I use a charger. I have solar panels that I very rarely use, but it's a necessity. I wouldn't leave home without it. You were mentioning about you carry too much stuff. Just a incidental here. I've like halved what you saw me carrying the last time you saw me for this trip to Alaska. I was trying different things out. I like had 3 different kind of cookware sets and stuff like that. I was trying to figure out what was the best. So next time you see my rig, I won't have as much stuff with me, not even close. And I'm still trying to trim stuff down.
One of the most important things in overlanding, in my opinion, is weight. I can't stress it enough that and I have a lot of experience with this. I mean, I took a grossly overweight truck across Africa, and it destroyed the vehicle. It got us stuck a million times. I mean, we ended up coming back from the trip after, being over in Africa for all these months and unloading the vehicle back in the United States after it came out of the container. And I swear to God, 75% of the things I took out of that truck were in the same box, in the same shape as when they went in, because we never touched them. And you go, what in the heck? And why did I bring all this stuff? And that's I'm just as bad as the next guy. We all do that. Less is more.
It is. And you're more comfortable with less.
Less fuel, less things to worry about, less boxes to pick up, to throw to the side so you can get to the thing that you really got to get to, which is frustrating as hell.
Oh, I agree.
I mean, it go on and on and on about weight, because it breaks down your suspension components. It wears your tires out faster. It uses more fuel. I mean, it's never ending. So, yeah, I mean, that was the right hand turn there from solar, but it goes back to solar does one thing, right? It charges things, and nowadays our definition of things and gear have to do usually with batteries, lithium batteries. Everything is so yesterday I go and pick up my road bike, which I hadn't had on board my truck for the last 6 months, because I'm riding a lot when I'm here in Massachusetts. And modern technology nowadays, right? My bike, if you guys any of you guys out there are cyclists, you'll know that, I mean, bikes are electronic now, right? So, it's like my bike won't start, basically, because it's got batteries to power shifting and everything. So like with that, if the battery isn't charged, the bike doesn't go anywhere. And
Right.
this, I'm not talking about powered bike. This is a pedal bike.
Right.
So, but that's our modern technology now. Everything, phone, you know, that just everything that's sitting around me right now. Here, I got my laptop sitting here to charge. Everything's charging. So we are power hogs. I'm a particular power hog. This truck, I can go up to using up to, I think my record was 5.3 kilowatts of power I used in one day.
Wow. That's crazy.
Yeah, and that's why I have 1,200 watts of solar and 900 amp hours of lithium battery, which is, I mean, many people would think it's gross overkill. I mean, I had the square footage to fit on the vehicle. So, and being a bigger vehicle, you end up using more power ultimately anyways. But
I think it's overkill too, but I'm saying it as a compliment because hanging out with you, camping with you, doing a little traveling with you, one of the things I like is you're never worried about your power. You know, I'm constantly seeing other people that I've hung out with where they have power, they have solar, but they're constantly monitoring it. They have to move panels around. They have to cut something off to cut something on, different things like that. And you just let it rip and you're never worried about power. Your home is like a home.
if you have the ability to have the power, I can't emphasize enough that you should have as much as you can get. Because even if you are not like me necessarily and have some of the things that I have that I'm powering, you don't know what the future is going to lie. You don't know whether you got, I really like this, blah, 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 blah. I think I'm going to buy that. And, or you have one refrigerator and you go, oh, maybe I can fit 2 refrigerators in here. And now I have to blah, blah, blah. Well, that, you doubled your power use. So I can't overemphasize being on the road, whether it's full-time or for brief periods or whatever. It's about comfort after all. And part of being comfortable is not worrying about things. I mean, part of the idea of going out and having a good time and seeing things and exploring and meeting people is being relaxed. And if you have to worry about, hold on, I just switched some lights on over there, I better turn the lights off over here, or, whatever that scenario is, or I got to flip my panels around, or, and the big thing about solar, and people don't understand, is when you got a panel that says it's 100 watts or 200 watts or whatever, that's bull crap. I mean, a panel is only as good as the sun. And if there's no sun, and it depends on where you are. If we're in coastal Oregon, well, that's not going to be the same as if you're down in southern Baja, or if you go up to Alaska. I mean, you could have a bright sunny day, but your sun quality is not nearly as good as it is in Mexico.
Not at all. So, not at all.
So the ratings and the numbers, don't get obsessed with the numbers. They don't mean anything. The more surface area you have, the more you can collect. Just look at it that way. And, but you only can collect what's being given to you. If it's a rainy day, well, you're not collecting a whole lot. So, I mean, that's kind of a solar mentality. And the other thing is, solar is completely useless without reserve. So if you don't have the reserve, I could spread out panels for 3 miles and have 18 billion kilowatts of solar panels. And if I don't have any batteries to store it in, that's great. I can run 50 refrigerators while it's daytime, and then it gets nighttime and I'm done.
Right.
So
good batteries.
There's 2 components. It's storage and generation.
Well, in my opinion, having a portable solar panel gives you the freedom to travel without needing to divert to find a power source to recharge everything. It allows you to extend the length of your time being remote or away. It allows you not to have to, most of us, when we travel, we may be spontaneous, but we still have an itinerary. And the more you have to go back to civilization, the more you have to shop, the more you have to recharge, whatever it is, that takes you away from your itinerary. So whether it's your stove, lights, or electronics that need power, portable solar panels will have you covered, in my opinion.
Yep. It's just one of the necessities. Power is a necessity, and it leads into a bunch of other things which we're not going to talk about now. But my feeling is the more that you can be self-sufficient, the more you can stick to your itinerary, right? So, and whether that's power or water or whatever it is, food, you know, you could list a whole mess of stuff, but the more you're self-sufficient and the longer you can be self-sufficient for, the better you can follow your itinerary.
I agree. So the next thing that the second most Googled topic in overlanding is gear, which I thought would be number one. But as we talked, solar panels made more sense. But gear was number two. So that basically, that covers everything. And there's a good side and a bad side to that. The one that people are trying to educate themselves on, figuring out what's the right or wrong things to have and take and use with them on their travels. But the other side of it, the bad side of it, in my opinion, is I meet so many people who tell me that they're going to go on this trip. They're going to do this, or they have these plans in the future after I get this lift, or I get this new stove, or I get, there's something that they have to buy or have installed or whatever before they can go on a trip. And usually from the outside looking in, I'm looking at, you could go right now. You don't need that. You just want that. So that's the bad side of it. What do you think?
So gear, you have an itinerary, you have a plan. This is what I want to do. Gear is simply a tool to get you to doing what you want to do. And you'll never have all of the gear that you need, because until you do your itinerary and your plan, you don't necessarily know what all the gear is that you're gonna need. So I would echo what you said. Get out there and do it. You're never gonna have everything that you need. So if you're waiting on something to purchase to go, I suggest to go. On the contrary to that, you know, everybody's requirements for gear are different, and they're dependent upon what you're doing, what your goal is, what your comfort level is, what you're trying to accomplish. So your gear should be paired to your goals and your itinerary and your route and where you're going and everything else. So I'll give you an example. Like if one of the components of your gear is, you know, a buddy heater, well, that's great, but not so great if you're going to go down to, you know, Central America. You're probably not going to need a heater. So that's probably not on your gear list. But what I'm saying is you come up with what your plan is. What do you do? So I'm equipped for doing what I choose to do. I'm not equipped for everything. You can't be equipped for everything. So I'm set up for what I'm going to be doing, or what my prediction is of what I'm going to be doing. And that morphs and changes a little bit all the time. But gear is a necessity it's an end to a means to an end, where you gotta not lose sight of what you're doing here. We're not gear collectors. We should be adventure collectors. You know,
I like that. I like the way you put that. I agree.
right? I mean, my goal isn't to collect gear. It's to collect memories and collect experiences, and the gear gets me to those. Yes,
I agree. So the next thing on the list at number 3 was stoves. Not shocked, but surprised that was all the way at number 3. But then again, when I think about it, one of the main things people like to do is get out, be somewhere beautiful, and cook. So I guess that makes sense. There are a lot of choices for stoves. A lot of choices for stoves. If I don't know the last time you looked, because I think you're pretty set on what you like to cook on.
I'm always set on what I like to cook on because I have looked.
Right. You are a huge TEMBO TUSK fan. As anybody who keeps up with your social media will definitely see you cooking up some delicious stuff. I have experienced that. You definitely can cook. But everybody doesn't want to cook that way. And I see a plethora of different things that people choose as a choice for their cooking stoves, from Coleman's to Partner steel stoves, you name it. I see it. A lot of Dometics in the van world. So
Yeah.
that would, I'm sorry.
No, I agree. There's a ton of stuff out there, and it comes back to, I'm going to keep harping on the same thing over and over again. It comes back to, what do you choose to do? Meaning, like, what do you eat? What do you like to eat? What do you like to do? How extensive do you like to prepare food? You know, everybody has a different mindset on that. You know, for me, and the reason that, you know, Phil brought up is that I cook mostly on the scuttle is because I find it to be the most versatile. I can do the widest range of stuff for the least amount of weight. So I had a Partner stove, and I had a Coleman. Was it Coleman? No, I can't remember. I had a little oven.
Camp Chef.
Camp Chef. I had a Camp Chef, and then I had a Camp Chef stand-up thing too, which was basically kind of like I would call it a lobster cooker. It could boil water very fast, very high BTUs.
I know what you're talking about.
All those things are cool. For me, I chose to go with lighter because I don't like the weight. Now, hold on. I'll show you something. All right. Go back to solar and electric. Look at this little thing. How little this thing is. It's called a dash. You can get this thing, no lie. You can get this thing on Amazon for like $9, I think. It's called a dash. And you plug it in, and it's basically a little griddle. You can make grilled cheese, you can make pancakes, you can make all sorts of little things. It's like, I mean, this is only a couple inches across. I use this thing, I mean, it's all greasy right now. I use this thing a ton. So, like, yeah, I'm used to scuttle a lot outside, but I'll tell you what, if it's raining out right now, I'm taking an English muffin out, put some cheese in there, maybe some tomato or bacon or something, sticking that down there, and boom, done. Uses very little power. So there's lots, like you said, there's lots of little options. Some of them probably wouldn't have thought of, because a lot of people are looking at, you know, your $400 stainless steel, you know, I call it the Overland oven or Overland setup or whatever it is. Well, I mean, that's Amazon for $8. You know, you can do what you want. So there are a lot of options, but like I said, it's what you eat. You know, are you somebody that's picky about food? Different people have different levels of food. I'll call it food acceptance. So depending on where you are, some people have to carry more food because they, you know, they're more picky about what they have, whether it's a brand or whatever. Me, I mean, this is my problem. I just eat. So I can go with local stuff all the time because I like food. That's my problem. And so I try everything.
Same here. Same here.
But, you know, that's me. So, and I, you know, and having said the skull, if you look behind me, I've got, you know, got a burner top here. I've got an oven on board here. So, I mean, I do have some flexibility on stuff. Having a big Overland rig makes that easier. But I'll tell you, when I was traveling in the, you know, my Land Rover and Jeep and stuff, I had as small of a setup as I could get, which is why I really ultimately gravitated to the Scottle, and I still use it even with this big truck.
Well, you don't have to explain. I love the Scottle. I have different things that I cook with, but whenever I want to cook fast, cook conveniently, and cook something good, I grab my Scotto. I know I can, and sometimes I don't know what I want to cook, even though I'm about to cook. With the Scotto, I know I can put it together. I can start it up, heat it up, and then I can go to my fridge, and I know I can just grab some protein. I can grab some vegetables, some noodles or some rice, and I'm going to end up with something delicious and healthy.
Yeah.
So you preaching to the choir about the Scotto.
Oh no. Yeah, and that's kind of why, but it's interesting that what's not on your list, because that's while we're talking about Scotto and we're talking about cooking, there's something that's missing off this list. We talked about solar, because you need power for all this stuff, right?
Yep.
And then we're talking about gear.
Yep.
Which is why we need power and all the things like a refrigerator that keep our food. And then we're talking about cooking, which has got to do with food. The thing that's interesting is missing on your list. So the three things that I think are most important in overlanding are power and water. And that's what's missing from the list, the water part. So we obviously the cooking, the gear and the cooking part here are the third component, but you need water. And that doesn't appear on your list. And I'm kind of surprised.
Well, it's actually reflective of what I see in overlanding and in travelers and nomadic people. Most people, like, they may have the world's best solar panels, they may have the best stove, but then when you get to their water solutions, they're either very minimal or they don't have a solution at all. That's not something people really spend a lot of time on.
See, I think they should be.
I agree. I agree.
This could be an American-based thing, because I'll tell you, traveling internationally where you're concerned, because health is obviously a big concern. You don't want to be getting sick on the road. Water is a worldwide concern, right? Water is probably talked about worldwide more than anything else. And the quality of water and the availability of water that's pure and that isn't going to get you sick. So the reason that water came to my mind is because one of the reasons I use the Scottle is because it uses less water. I am blessed with this truck that has a fairly large freshwater tank, but I'll tell you, there's nothing that uses water more than doing dishes.
Yes.
And that's another reason why the Scottle for me is lighter, because A, it takes up less space and it's light. And then I don't have to carry as many dishes, pots, pans, and whatever to cook out of. But water is a key thing. And that's, I'm surprised it doesn't appear on that list, because on top of cooking with water, obviously we have to drink. So drinking water, and then cleansing. Whether it's taking showers for you or washing things or whatever, water comes into play here.
Well, I think there's a lot of omissions, in my opinion. There's nothing about navigation on the list. There's nothing about sanitation on the list.
Trash. Yeah. What do you do with trash?
Well,
I mean,
and when I'm talking about sanitation, I'm also including hygiene as well. Which
is based on water,
right? So yeah, those things should be on the list, but they're definitely big omissions. And that, again, that's why I thought it's logical for solar panels to be there, but I didn't think it would be there for the same reasons why I think that we're not seeing some of the other things, because people don't think about some of those things. So it's quite a few things that if I were writing the list, I would rearrange this list a lot.
Let me give you an example about, I think this goes to your point, what you were saying a little earlier about, being on your itinerary or doing by your plan. One of the things I discovered in the last couple of months, and this, and I'm circling around, I guess I'm bringing water back into this too, is that I've met a fair amount of people that have trucks that are outfitted that lack water, particularly in the sanitation department. So, and a lot of them are vans. because we're seeing more and more vans right now. And a lot of the vans are set up that don't have any shower facility. And these are people that are living full-time on the road. So one, it begs the question, if you're living full-time on the road, I mean, I get going out for the weekend and I get going, you know, for shorter periods of time without a shower or whatever. I get all that, but these are people full-time. So what you're telling me is you're on the road 365 days a year. How do you not have a shower? So how does that work? Explain this to me. And one of the answers that I've gotten more times than I can tell you is that, well, we use other people's facilities. We use gyms or, you know, Planet Fitness or whatever. But I mean, maybe I'm wrong, or maybe I'm closed-minded, but like that's not on my itinerary. So what are you telling me, that your itinerary is to go to Las Vegas and then drive to Salt Lake City and then drive to Denver? I don't what is your itinerary? Because that's where Planet Fitness is. Planet Fitness is not in the Utah desert. It's not in backwoods Wyoming. It's sure as hell not in Glacier National Park. So explain. And that's my fear. And again, maybe I mean, there's different ways to live on the road. If your goal is to go to cities and bounce from city to city to go to Planet Fitness, you know, I'm not judging you and saying it's bad, but that isn't what I'm set up to do, and I don't have any interest. Basically, if there's a Planet Fitness, I'm not interested in going to that location. That's just general.
I get that. I totally get that.
But it goes to, if your itinerary is to explore out and about, it would appear to me anyways that you are missing a key component to your bag of I guess what we're calling gear. You know, it would be the same thing as if I went out, I don't have any means to keep food. So I mean, that's great if you're gonna eat Mountain House freeze-dried food and that's all you're gonna ever eat. But I'm not sure that that's a great idea.
Not at all. Not for me.
Yeah, not for me either. So, you know, so it would appear that you probably need cooking gear and you probably need refrigeration of some kind, even if it's rudimentary or, you know, rudiment. You know, it doesn't need to necessarily be a big gigantic Dometic or ARB fridge or something. But
I agree.
You got to have these kind of key things, because to me, overlanding mimics living at home. It's kind of living at home in a simpler way. So all the things that you do in your house, you kind of still have to do all those things on the road. But you got to make compromises to some extent, but you can't just get rid of them. You can't just go, okay, I eat at home, but when I go on the road, I don't eat. Well, that doesn't work. I mean, obviously you have to eat. So to me, it's the same thing. You still got to wash things. You still got to, you got to have water. You got to have power. You probably use your phone at home. You got to use your phone on the road more than likely. So it's a smaller version of home.
So that's a good segue, I think, into what's the next thing on the list, which is campsites.
Home.
I thought that would actually be one or two if I had to guess. I would have thought that campsites would have been one or two. That's probably the thing I do the most research on is campsites, whether it's formal campsites, whether it's a KOA, whether it's somewhere remote. Most of my research goes to where I'm going to stay. What is the most common app that you use, if you use an app to find campsites?
I use a couple apps. I mean, I use iOverlander, certainly. I use Seeker, which is similar to iOverlander. I have a pretty big database of like my own stuff. I'm a Harvest Host member, so I look at Harvest Host locations that are out there. I mean, I just drove across the country. It depends on what my goal is. So to go back to your idea of an itinerary. So it depends on what my itinerary is. If my itinerary is to stay in beautiful places and I'm out exploring and I want to stay, then I do a lot more research to try to find recently I went to like the Teton area. So I looked up a whole mess of different options of where I could stay. And I knew what I was looking for. I wanted to be high enough elevation because I wanted to be cooler. I wanted a view of the mountains. So I looked at different stuff and use some of the apps to be like, well, that place is full of mosquitoes. You're going to get eaten alive. Okay, well, maybe I don't want that one. So I kind of look at all those things to make that. And I agree with you. I spent a lot of time looking where I'm going to stay. Now, I just drove across America, did not spend a whole lot of time. I knew my number one thing was to get across the states as fast as possible. So I wanted to not leave the highway. So my search was driving along, flipping, and looking for where the rest stops and truck stops were. Because those, to me, that's ideal. If I'm going to transit fast, I don't even want to get off the highway. If I could camp in the middle of the highway, I would. So what's the next best thing? A rest area or a truck stop that's right off. So you pull off, park, wake up in the morning, right back on the highway, you keep going. So less time is spent on those, but still you got to pick ones that are like, when it comes down to those kinds of things, they got to be legal, right? Like if you drive in and it says no overnight parking or whatever, you got a problem. So apps are good for doing research on that. I agree. Campsites are big.
It's big for me. I use iOverlander, like you mentioned. I use a bunch. I have a folder full of all the apps that I use. I use different ones, different times. Sometimes they give you a good one. Sometimes they don't. So I like to use more than one app. But the thing that I most commonly use is Google Maps. Even if I use the apps, even if I use other things, it usually starts with Google Maps. And what I do is I go to the terrain feature so that I can see the terrain. And then I look for the area that's furthest away from the highway that is green. And it looks like maybe it's hilly and it's mountainous. And then I start looking for areas that might be a good campsite by going to the satellite imagery. And I look at that and I try to see if I can figure out where campsites are. Then I go to Gaia GPS and I use their, one of the layers shows you all the campsites that are in the forest and in the national parks. So I'll use that to kind of bring me to a certain area. Even if I don't want to stay at those campsites, usually the remote campsites aren't that far from those campsites. So Google Maps, to me, that's probably one of the biggest. If I were to think about all the gear and innovation and technology since I've been traveling, if I had to rate the number one thing, it would be Google Maps for me. It changed my life.
I'm glad you mentioned that because it's funny. I do the same thing as you, particularly when it comes to specifically looking at the satellite view, because from the satellite view, I can tell a couple things. You can tell what it looks like from a tree perspective, which I'm always concerned with living off grid all the time because I'm looking for sun.
Mm-hmm.
So I look at the site and I go, oh, that's nice. It's remote. It's in the woods, but I got a clearing here. I can see clearings. So I know I can get solar power. And at this point, I now have Starlink on board. I'm looking to be able to get my satellite up so that I can have connectivity, because most of the time I'm looking for places that don't have cell coverage anyways. So glad you mentioned the Google, because I use the Google as well.
Yeah, and another thing about Google and GPS, how it changed my life, was I was the guy who I'd take the highway and then I might get off the highway. And then when I get off the highway, I may go to a small town and then get off a road. but then I would stop there. There's no stopping now for me. I'll keep going deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper because of the availability of Google Maps. It used to be I researched a paper map and I didn't want to go too far off of the route that I initially made because I wanted to make sure I could get back to it. I don't worry about none of that stuff no more. I just go wherever I want to go.
And the other thing you bring up is that what's nice about it is that, and what I would tell people that are listening to us, spend more time doing the research before you do it, looking at the maps, looking at the apps, going through all your research. I like to do it, to be honest, I like to do it when I'm having coffee in the morning or something, if I'm going to move to another location, or even the night before, so I know what I'm doing the next day. But you spend way less time searching for campsites and where you're going to spend the night than if you do all your research in advance. Because in the old days, I used to drive, and you get to, you going down some dirt road, then it ends in a gate, and you're like, oh, that ain't gonna work. And you turn around, you're all over the place. It starts getting dark, and you still don't have a place to stay. Not the way to do it. Spend more time doing. It's like measure 4 times and cut once theory. It's kind of like that. Do all your research on the thing, and I can't always have plan B and C.
Yes.
Sometimes A doesn't work. You drive up and there's 6 guys camped there already. That's not going to work.
Yes. Yes.
So A, B, and C.
Yes. That's just like when we were in Utah and I took you to my little spot and I wasn't worried at all. One, because I was pretty sure nobody was going to be there. But secondly, I had a B, a C, a D, a E, a F, and a G plan as to where we could go. Yep. It makes you more relaxed on your journey.
Right. Yep.
I remember spending the whole day worrying about where I'm going to be.
Yeah.
I don't do that anymore.
Oh.
Thanks, Google.
Even coming across America recently, staying at rest areas and truck stops, I had A, B, and C. Here's one 12 miles down the road. Here's one 20 miles down the road. Here's one 40 miles down the road, all within an acceptable period of time as I'm doing my last minute research, because I'm on the highway. It's getting to be, whatever, 4 o'clock in the afternoon. But I had A, B, and C in case, the first one either didn't get a good vibe or had a big sign that said no overnight parking, or it was full, or who knows. But just always have backups.
Mike, I even go further than that. Let's just take my trip to Alaska. I have already researched where all of the different grocery stores and gas stations are along the whole trip, and extra ones in case, one is closed or power is out in that town or whatever. I know what grocery store I'm going to go to as soon as I cross the border into Canada. And I also researched several other grocery stores just to make sure that if for some reason that one's closed or the information is bad, or whatever. So I do that. I'm almost with the whole thing, but I want to end it with that. With all that research, I'm doing that research so that I have freedom, because it may sound like, oh, he's got this tight schedule. No, I don't. And the reason I don't have one is because I'm not worried about finding a campsite. I'm not worried about a grocery store or a gas station or whatever. So it really frees you up to be more spontaneous with your lifestyle. That's what I think.
I agree. Because once again, it's about collecting adventures, memories, and whatnot. It's not about pulling to the side of the road, frantically scrolling through your phone in a panic attack because it's about to get dark. You got nowhere to stay, and you just have no plan. Whoops! And by the way, I don't have any food because I forgot to look where the grocery store are. And Baja was a good example of that this winter. Half the time the gas station is closed or has weird hours. Or these are the things you need to see in advance. The more knowledge you have in your head, the smoother the trip will go. Even if you have a very loose itinerary, it's still a great idea to know your surroundings. I mean, that's the bottom line.
Yes, I totally agree. So let's move on to number 5. Top topics in overlanding is cargo. Just cargo. So I don't know if they mean trailers. Do they mean cargo boxes, or just everything that you carry? Or are people just is it people are searching for space solutions, like like goose gear or something like that?
I think it comes. I think what they're talking about is that this is our transition from gear, right? So we talked about gear, cargo. So to a lot of people, gear is things that are bolted or attached to their truck. I think cargo might be things that is more what I'm going to put in the category of stuff. So we're still on weight. To me, we're still talking about weight. We're still talking about carrying. So cargo to me, as an example, would be, I've got a kayak, I got some bikes, I got some storage boxes on the roof to keep, cycling gear and helmets, and spare this and that in there. This is all cargo. And I think what you're saying is, I bet you people are trying to figure out how to take more with less space.
Yeah.
That'd be my guess.
Well, I drive a Jeep, so I play the Tetris game with how I'm going to store things every single time I get in my rig. I also thought it was probably had something to do with trailers too.
It might, because I mean, that's one of the most popular things in overlanding right now is, and I kind of equate that a little bit to, how do I take more with the same vehicle, right? Mm-hmm. So if you've got your Jeep and you're going to Alaska and you're, like you said, you're playing Tetris, how can I take, what if I want to go, I don't know, scuba diving or whatever? How do I get more gear in my truck? Well, I can still have one engine, still have one truck, but I can put a hitch on it and I can pull a trailer and carry more gear. I think that's what's really driven that trailer market, because think about it. What are most of the overland trailers? What do they have? Most of them have rooftop tent. Most of them have cooking apparatus on board. So these are all things that you have on your truck. They've moved it off of the truck, which opens up more space on board the primary vehicle. It's a way to make your truck bigger.
So I have a question for you, and then I'm going to tell you a little story afterwards. What do you think about trailers? Would you advise a trailer?
Depends on what you're doing. I mean, it depends on what your motivation goals, what your.
I don't know what I'm doing. I want to travel all over. I just want to travel all over. I don't know.
So I have experience with trailers. I would say there's pluses and minuses. I mean, for me, I found there to be more minuses than pluses because it's more weight. It's another thing to worry about. It's another set of axle with more tires. It's limiting on off the beaten path and off track, because a trailer tracks differently than a vehicle does, just the way it works, particularly on off camber stuff. The pluses are that if you have a tent, you have your cooking stuff, you can detach it, leave it in camp, go take your truck and explore, potentially get your truck down more difficult terrain because you've gotten rid of your house and your tent and your weight. So your truck might weigh less, which would actually make it better. So there's pluses and minuses to both of those things. There's more costs involved when you go through tolls, across bridges, on ferries. So, trailers bring in a whole other dynamic of stuff. I just found it to be difficult, and this is coming from a guy that's driving a 22,000 pound, pretty big overland rig. But this is this truck, believe it or not, way more maneuverable than a smaller truck with a trailer, in my opinion. Well, first of all, I had a smaller truck and a trailer before this, and honestly, it was longer length. It was about 3 feet longer than this truck, so it took up, more space. You can't, you can't back up very well. It's difficult in parking lots and even going to the supermarket, and so. I don't want to diminish because I know there's a lot of people that like trailers, and I'm not suggesting that it's a bad idea for a lot of people. I found it not to work for what I'm doing.
Well, I think that
why do you not have a trailer?
Well, I have a story for you. I had the opportunity to get one of what is considered one of the top trailers out there for free. They were going to give it to me, and they let me have it for a week to try and incentivize me to do this. And at the time, I wanted to do it. I was looking at trailers, so I was interested. So I took the trailer, took it on a trip, and I brought it back after a week because I got tired of going places where signs were saying no trailers. And this was 5 years ago. Since then, I've seen more and more and more places that have signs that say no trailers. So one thing was, I didn't want something that, like, one of the reasons I don't have a dog, which I love dogs, is because there's places that you can't go with a dog. And
Canyonlands.
I'm sorry?
Canyonlands is one of them.
So it was just like the same thing with the dog. I didn't want something that potentially was going to prevent me from having experiences that I wanted. So that was the main reason. But I liked the idea of being able to carry more gear and all of that. But the main issue for me was what I just said. I didn't like the idea that I would go somewhere and then there's this sign that says, "Oh, no trailer."
Right.
One of the main reasons why I've stuck with the vehicle that I have is, I'll give you another story. I can't think of the name of the town, but there's a town in Idaho where they have this thing, like, it's called the running of the sheep or something like that. And they have the sheep go through the town in Idaho, and it's like a festival and everybody films it. It's a parade and all of that. And I would have had to park like miles away from the event if I had had a trailer. But because I have the same shape and form of a regular car, I was able to park like right off of the street that the parade was on. If I had had the trailer, I wouldn't have gone to the event because I wouldn't have wanted to park so far away and not be able to observe my vehicle. So it's the limitations of, I don't want something that keeps me from going places.
Yeah.
And in some ways it allows you to do more, but in some ways it limits you. And like I said, since I had that opportunity, that was 5 years ago, I've seen more and more signs on land saying no trailers. And I believe that that's going to increase even more, because one of the reasons these signs are popping up is people just zoom along the trails with these trailers, and the trailers ruin the trail. So there are people that don't like the trailers.
So they got to rescue them, because people flip them too, because trailers are pretty easy to roll over. So that, and then they got to, do a recovery too. So that's another reason that particularly I've seen that sign in places where the trail is a little on the gnarly side. They don't want you to take a trailer because they know you're going to dump it.
The other negative was what people usually sell as a positive. They say, oh, I can just park my trailer here and then I can take my rig and go do whatever I want to do. Well, I took a trip with one of these trailers, and every time I left at the trailer somewhere, the whole time I was like, man, I hope the trailer's there when I get back. You know, I got a big trailer just full of toys that I'm worried about. So I actually didn't like leaving. I would prefer to just throw a raggedy tent out and claim the area than to leave a several thousands of dollars worth of trailer with several thousands of dollars of equipment inside of it. Yeah, but minus those two things, it's all positives for me.
Yeah, I mean, it's like anything else. Everything has its pluses and minuses. Like, you know, and I agree with you. The thing that gives you the most access to going to the places that you want to go is what's going to be the best suited thing for you. So for some people, you know, the trailer thing isn't going to be an issue. You know, like I get occasionally people are like, well, you know, I wouldn't want your truck because you can't go places with it, which is true. I can't take this truck through, you know, some back class 4 road in Vermont because the trees are too tight, it's too big. So I can't take this truck on that. You know, there's limitations to anything. You know, I have friends that have school buses, which are fantastic. You know, they afford you a super comfortable lifestyle. They're big enough, but you know, they don't do too well on you know, crappy terrain. You know, so there's you know, vans. You know, my experience in Baja with vans is like, you know, that most of them are 2-wheel drive, and they particularly the long wheelbase ones are you know, they're god awful in the sand. You're getting stuck every which direction. So, but you know, they're great in many other places. They're great, particularly when you want to be stealth or somewhere moving around, you know, in towns with them. They can go virtually. I mean, I've been hanging out with some people that take them, you know, they're 2-wheel drive. They get pretty much to a lot of stuff that I was surprised that they didn't have any problem getting into. So, you know, everything has a plus and minuses. One of the reasons why I have a motorcycle on the back of my truck, because what the truck can't do, the motorcycle can, and vice versa. So I've kind of split the difference, and I have multiple ways of doing stuff, because I do believe, and I still own my old Land Rover, you know, which serves its purpose. It does great stuff. There's no perfect thing, you know. Everything is built to do certain things, but it's you need to get what's going to get you the most enjoyment about what you like to do. So that's how you would make a decision, in my opinion, on the trailer thing. For me, the trailer was just there were too many things that didn't work for what I wanted to do.
And you had a nice trailer.
Yeah, I mean, it was
you
nice.
Had a
I mean,
nice
I lived
trailer.
in it.
Are we talking about the same trailer? I'm talking about the one that went with your Unimog.
Yeah,
that was nice.
Yep.
So this is going to be the last one. We're not going to do all 15, but number 6 is off-road vehicles. I would have thought that would have been in the top 2 or 3, but it's all the way down at 6. I'm shocked, but I guess you've already got an off-road vehicle, and then you start looking for the gear and the campsite and the cargo and the solar panels.
I want to rephrase that. I want to call it off the established interstate system vehicle, meaning that, like, I think we've moved into an era at this point where we've come to the realization that it could be, like I had mentioned before, a school bus or a van or a Jeep or a large overland rig, or, you know, quite frankly, I did a video, you know, a couple of months back on a buddy of mine that has a Volkswagen, old Volkswagen bus, and he took that thing like through Moab, and it's 2-wheel drive. So off-road, to me, is getting off the beaten track, but it doesn't necessarily mean that we are going 4-wheeling
I agree.
that we're all, that we're in Moab and we're doing, slick rock and we're, that's
agree.
different. That's like a sport, but overlanding isn't about that. Overlanding should be banking experiences and memories. And I don't care what you do that on.
And I want to clarify something. Moab is way more than rock crawling. There is so much more to do in Moab than just rock crawling.
I keep throwing it under the bus.
Huh?
I said I keep throwing it under the bus.
Yeah. It's a great place for climbing, hiking, biking. They've even got decent food in the downtown. So you don't have to bring your rig every time you go to Moab. And if you're driving through, and stop, have a meal. There's a lot to do in Moab. And I'm protecting it now, but I generally throw Moab under the bus too. But it's only because I've been going for so long, and I just remember a different time. So
yeah, me too.
It's like a real city now. It's always packed. It didn't used to be like that. It used to just kind of be like
didn't have anything.
Vagabonds.
Really had facilities at one point. I mean,
I remember when you turned off of Main Street, most of those roads were dirt roads.
Yeah.
They're now all paved. So with that, we're going to end this podcast. And I just want to mention that this podcast will be out the week when I will be gone. I'll be in Alaska. So do you want to wish me well or anything?
I definitely want to wish you well. And I want you to explore and see as many things in Alaska and then bring them back, because we are going to do a podcast talking about your trip to Alaska. And hopefully you're going to inspire other people to go up there, because I'll tell you, out of the 50 states, it's definitely in the top 5.
Agreed. And we're going to do that. But in addition to that, I want to also do a live podcast with you while I'm there. So we're not going to wait till it's all over to discuss it. We're going to also do a podcast while they're live. I'm looking forward to that.
Alaska to Massachusetts, all on one screen.
Yes. All right. So, I'm going to talk to the audience real quick and end this. All right. Okay, everybody, you know what I'm going to say. Stay safe, tread lightly, and hopefully I'll see you here or on the trail soon.